Hey everybody, this is Rydo, and today we're looking at Wolfenstein the Old Blood, which starts off with quite a wall of text here as far as photosensitivity warnings. There are recent, past this point, court cases that have set precedent that you are, to some extent, probably liable if you accidentally or intentionally, definitely if you're intentionally, trying to cause a seizure in somebody or epilepsy effects. But certainly, there needs to be a better symbol here than having five different languages say the exact same thing at the very beginning of a video game. It really kind of kills the intro before you even get to a menu. And frankly, I wasn't even sure I was going to get to a menu. I thought it was very possible it was just going to jump into the game. So, this is a 2015 game that is both a sequel and a prequel and an alternate universe telling of or continuation of the Wolfenstein reboot series. The New Blood sends our hero, BJ Blazkowicz, into the future, and I think in the first game, if not then later, introduces the idea of ancient Atlantean technology armor that you're wearing throughout the game, which honestly, that element probably would have been better left on the cutting room floor. Whereas the Old Blood is still in like 1945, I believe, but there will be zombies. And so this is going to be an odd attempt at remaking something slightly closer to what the original Wolfenstein games are. Inherently, there's way more Wolfenstein games in the previous series than you would think, and than there probably should have been. Most people really only remember Wolfenstein 3D, which is actually a sequel for like a Commodore game called Wolfenstein, or Castle Wolfenstein or something, which nobody remembers that. Uh, so, if you were going to try to remake Wolfenstein 3D, replacing the Nazis with zombies is kind of the thing in fashion now. It's a little bit easier, or it would have been in 2015, to try and say we need to stop platforming and showing Nazis as just humans. We should just make them Nazi zombies, so then nobody can relate to them or nobody can complain about them. Germany, in particular, has laws in their constitution about depicting swastikas and Nazi memorabilia and propaganda, and that has long since been a problem with the Wolfenstein series in particular, because like it would just consistently be banned or not allowed or delayed in release, mostly banned in Germany. Um, but even Germany is kind of opened up on that. But it is just in a modern time easier to depict zombies as the bad guys, because zombies are a little bit more timeless, frankly, as the years go on. 200-300 years from now, I wouldn't be surprised if zombies still very recognizable and understandable, but I also wouldn't be surprised if Nazis have been mostly relegated to a thing in history books that people don't really relate to. Uh, it definitely feels like the Old Blood should have been just DLC for the New Blood. It's odd that it is its own standalone game, and if anything, it probably indicates that the New Blood was just so well received that they didn't want to effectively tamper the hype around the New Blood to uh, or the New Order, actually, is the name of the game. Wolfenstein the New Order. Yeah, I guess they just didn't want to tamper it by going back and changing things so much. And that worked probably fairly well, because Wolfenstein 2 did come out, and then eventually they made another spin-off game called Youngbloods, which wasn't particularly well received, and then Wolfenstein 3 will eventually come out. And so there will be a trilogy of good games, and then some side experiments that'll be just seen as side experiments like the Old Blood. Uh, there is weirdness, certainly, that this game and the New Order are both credited by being made by MachineGames, owned by Bethesda, now at this point owned by Microsoft, because I definitely would lean towards just making the assumption that this Old Blood would have been developed in parallel as two different game pitches. Let's set one in the future and see what happens in that alternate universe where the Nazis are still around in a future several decades later, and then let's set this in 1945 time, in World War II time, but there'll be zombies instead. Wolfenstein has always been fairly crazy around its concepts anyways, because the final boss is just Mecha Hitler at the end of Wolfenstein 3D. Let's move that mouse cursor out of the way. Is there anything else that we need to cover? Because it does just seem like we're going to jump into this. Interesting. It's interesting to have it pick a save slot before you even get to the menu. That seems wrong. And it definitely feels like you would want to, when you click new, or when you come back to this main menu later and try and choose load a save, that would be the point where you would choose a different save slot. What it's implying there is that the save slots themselves may not allow for individual save files, or the save slots are supposed to indicate profiles. Alright. Don't hurt me, can I play daddy? Bring 'em on, I'm death incarnate, and Uber. I bet there's another difficulty that changes at that point. Tutorials and loot hints. I'm playing this on an Xbox One controller, and this should be a game that is fairly new enough that it would work fairly well. Let's turn on all the subtitles instead of just foreign languages. This should put my computer through its paces. It's interesting that it's actually naming the audio device it's using. For me, I'm using Voice Meter Banana to separate out the audio when I record, so that's why it says that device, which that's right. Interesting. It says it's on monitor 3, but for me that would be monitor 1. Adaptive vertical sync on versus off. We'll just leave it as adaptive and just leave everything at a default. See, there's some collectibles. I vaguely recall, it's been a while since I played the New Order, that there were collectibles in the chapters of New Order, and I don't think I quite got them all. And I don't think there was quite enough of a replayability around the idea of going back and following some kind of walkthrough to try to get all the collectibles. I wouldn't be surprised if you can unlock Wolfenstein 3D or Wolfenstein 2 by finding some kind of secret somewhere, whether it's getting the collectibles or not. Guess we have all kinds of statistics that they'll keep an eye on, which that feels maybe a little extreme, particularly since it seems like it's going to compare you to the world rank and your friend's rank. So that does kind of feel like they are going to try and get you to play this game a little bit more. will unlock challenges with doing the main story. I am recording this for my Halloween month. I've decided to be a little bit more lenient on how scary a horror game really has to be to play it. Normally, a first-person shooter where you're shooting zombies is not going to be scary enough psychologically to really justify being isolated into the October Halloween month. But I'm running out of the scariest of the scariest games, and I am trying to also follow up on series I've started but more often. But even from this main menu, you can see BJ Blazkowicz is very much a butt kicker character, and you are going to be very much be coming from a angle of being very empowered to defeat the enemies and not really scared or afraid of the enemies. Alright. Now, they did, a couple of years ago, MachineGames did, come out and just like actively apologize for this, even though this is basically just a modernization of what Wolfenstein games difficulty settings were before. There has definitely become this argument that's pushed out, and it's an argument I don't personally agree with, where they make the argument that games should be designed in such a way that they are super easy and everyone can beat them and no one can struggle, and even lazy bad game players that turn out to be mostly video games journalists or mainstream video games journalists should be able to play on easy and see everything and feel like they get the all of the same content and basically participation trophies for everybody. And this argument has unfortunately been propagandized and pushed under the banner of accessibility, which is intellectually dishonest in my opinion, and I won't go too much into it, but at a certain point, somebody who has actual physical disabilities, since that is going to be so unique to that person, they may be able to play games, they may be not, but there's just not a level in which a sport can accommodate that. Even in the Special Olympics, not everybody with a disability can compete in the Special Olympics. It's just a sad fact of reality, and no amount of whining about it can change that. But it's intellectually dishonest, like I said, because that's not what they're talking about. Mainstream video game journalists complaining about games being difficult do not care one bit about actual disabled people being able to play the game. There's been way more progress and accommodation done for people with physical and mental disabilities in video games than pretty much any other sport and any other form of entertainment, certainly, but the push still goes. Now, on the other hand, yes, there is a tradition around having "Can I Play Daddy?" and then having him animating the character in a baby bonnet and a pacifier. I can see how that might be a little insulting, and so maybe if you just said, let's not take the joke that far and let's get rid of the pictures, this would have worked just as well. But the artist wanted to do that, and I'm really trying to be the last person to ever suggest an artist be censored. If we're going to ever allow free art creation or prevent censorship, we're going to have to just allow some artists to do some disgusting art, disgusting speech. Free speech protects disgusting speech first before anything. So if you personally are disgusted by the fact that you actually suck at games, and I am one that kind of sucks at games, Um, so if you're personally offended by seeing the screenshot at the very beginning here, that's fine to be personally offended, but that doesn't mean people should have a right to stop the artist from doing it or making the art. And so I have to stand by their decision here. If anything, critically, I should complain about "Don't hurt me" just having the character have his eyebrows raised and his mouth agape, compared to "Bring him on" just having his eyebrows furrowed and his mouth closed. That's not artistically enough of a difference between these two. And that's where I would see, if you were going to criticize anything, there should be more variety here. And there's fairly significant difference here because his head is tilted down. It's more in shadow. It is much more angry. It's probably too far of a jump to be just like bloodthirsty and covered in blood with no blood here. You probably would have wanted to scale. Start here, put a little bit of blood here. Interestingly, they depict blood on him, but they don't depict any scars, so that's something to say too. If anything, it definitely feels like they thought of the extremes, or they ran out of ideas at the extremes, and because the middle three are pretty simple. Can we change the difficulty at any point? I don't know.
This war is a disease.
Hopefully we can.
Blood spilled by warriors.
Because starting at the middle, I'll try it, but I'm not that good of a gamer. I may have to drop the difficulty down. They've changed his name from BJ Blazkowicz to William, instead of going by like Bill as a short name. So there is a level of censorship in the remake that they've gone with, instead of BJ just being short for like blowjob.
I hope you don't mind the weight of the world on your shoulders, Agent Blazkowicz.
I've got pretty solid shoulders, Agent 1.
Well, we're losing the bloody war.
Nobody told me.
Interesting that they just call him Agent 1.
General Death's Head is manufacturing unstoppable killing machines in a secret compound. One of his lieutenants, Helga von Schabs, is keeping the folder mentioned in your mission briefing at her base of operations, Castle Wolfenstein.
I control the
this folder contains
controllers,
the Death's Head's compound.
the camera.
It'll be our last chance, this, before the Nazis wipe out all that's good in the world.
America would never fold.
Yeah, the New Order really doesn't spend a lot of time in Castle Wolfenstein. And they have these giant robotic dogs. So this is very much similar to the events of the New Order, and if anything, it would have kind of made sense to it would make sense to almost start this exactly the same for the first couple of minutes, and then show a split.
So no talking, and keep your gun holstered for as long as you can.
You have this dot in the middle of the screen to keep you from being motion sickness. So in the New Order, you end up getting knocked out and in a coma, if I recall correctly, and that's why it's several. So yeah, the coma in the New Order lets you go into the future, where I guess we don't end up getting in a coma, but you still are definitely in an alternate reality from what really happened. Nazis never had giant robotic um, dog creatures that I think are run by human brains and death machines. This reboot series tries to stay fairly far away from Hitler too. We haven't actually seen him as a character, instead introducing new characters. I can definitely see that there's a lot of pop-in just off the edges of the screen, which arguably maybe the field of view should be changed. Also, arguably maybe the field of view should be changed because there is a curving here as I try to tilt my head sideways that does feel like that would potentially lead to motion sickness inducing effects. There's definitely a possibility, though, that this big canopy is being run on its own little separate engine, and this skybox is all being run on its own separate engine, and that almost all other gameplay will take place inside the castle, smaller areas that don't have to depict as much. At a certain level, I do kind of question. We have a model unlocked, and we can hit back and check that, and concept art unlocked. Of course, we probably won't want to stop and pause the story while that's all happening. Yeah, I do question what you can really do with this series, though. It feels like you can do a lot more with Doom, because you could just constantly make more Doom games without it really feeling as tired.
Zeigen Sie Ihre Papiere.
Hier, bitte sehr.
Like,
Alles klar.
whereas I think the Wolfenstein trilogy will probably end, and then we won't see another Wolfenstein game for maybe a decade.
Guten Morgen, Herr Jäger.
Was gibt's, Greta?
So the dog is sniffing you out.
Die Papiere bitte.
Let's see.
Augenblick, warten Sie.
So we introduce this guy.
Frankfurt. Sind Sie Frankfurter?
Ja, ein Hotdog.
I think that's stolen straight from an Indiana Jones movie.
So ein komischer Kauz. Die spinnen die Amis. Hotdog. Die werden sich wundern, wenn wir an der Macht sind. Weiter. Greta. Bei Fuß.
So they're almost certainly introducing that guy as a major character, but will we see him again as a human, or will we see him again as a zombie? I feel like I just grabbed something off the counter there as a collectible.
Hot dog.
Reckon I had to say something.
That was Rudy Jaeger, Helga's second in command. I hear he feeds his dogs with prisoners from the castle's dungeon.
Oops, knocked my mouse. Even a slight knock of the mouse is gonna have the screen jump. Which I guess that means I should just immediately turn over the mouse, and so that doesn't happen again. I can definitely tell that there's an extra sensitivity in the mouse that compared to the controller. And the controller itself feels like it's a little too sensitive. Let's see. You could read this if you wanted to, but I'll just leave it to pausing now if you want to read it yourself. This is going to be more of a fast-paced type game, so taking a break to read, I think, is probably not what I'm looking for. Apparently I've found a secret area, and because of that I already had the key. That's weird. And what's in the secret area? I kind of appreciate the idea of having secret areas in games shown to you very early. And this is how it worked in the first time, is that you would fall asleep here and then you would just be able to play I believe, Unreal Engine 3 version of Wolfenstein 3D, not the actual version of Wolfenstein 3. That definitely feels rough, to say the least. It's X to open and X to reload, which would mean you would have to reload quite a bit. I feel like in the first version of the game, you only could play the first level instead of a take on all of it. You can definitely see that there's some pop-in going up here too. And I definitely remember that in the original version of the game, when you would hold the space button down and touch a wall to look for secret passages, it would constantly make noise, where it's not making any noise now. When you... I'm definitely not going to try and play all of this. And I don't think there's actually any benefit to shooting them in the head. Almost certainly this is not how the actual game is going to play. If the game does play this awkwardly clunky, I don't know if I'd really pay enough of attention to it to really run. Like, I don't think I'd make it all the way through the Old Blood if it played this clunky. Now, the original Wolfenstein 3D game doesn't have regenerative health, and that's why the Atlantean armor is kind of added as an element to explain away regenerative armor or regenerative health. You can see when I'm picking up food now, it is overcharging the health in this game, and then it's going back down slowly to 100. You can get armor. I wouldn't be surprised if the Old Blood does play that way. You definitely couldn't crouch and couldn't jump in the original Wolfenstein 3D game. I wouldn't be surprised if it's more of a case... little tutorial popping up in this is odd. I wouldn't be surprised if it's a case that you're going to have to find multiple sleeping positions to get to multiple levels. That would kind of make some sense too. So, like, this would be only the first level. And then we'd have to work our way towards another secret area for level 2. Really questionable whether that's worth it. And you can fire way faster. So secret panels literally have the prompt up Alright, so we now have the assault rifle. Let's... It says press and hold back. No, that's not what I want to do. It's the right bump. And then the right stick to select the weapon. I definitely do expect it to, the Old Blood, to kind of play this way, though. And that is fairly accurate to the way it worked in the original game. You may have a faster shooting gun, but it still takes 3 shots to kill anything. Most of these characters. Old silver is new. That's not what was in here before. What was in here before were score increasing valuables of like stolen items by the Nazis, crosses and found like expensive gold things. I can't quite remember what it was, but definitely wasn't just old silver. So that kind of makes sense. Notably here, no censorship really taking place here. You have a picture in pixely art of Hitler with a swastika armband. You have swastikas all over the place here. The Nazis really did kill the Asian elements of the swastika by adopting it as a symbol of good luck, health, and happiness. That's what it was before. And they tilted it so that it was usually depicted not in a square format, but more in a diamond format. And they used it so heavily that now it is completely associated with them. Again, maybe in 300 or 400 years, we'll start to see things like the swastika and the manji, which is the swastika backwards, used in Buddhist temples, have much more of a resurgence, and people will no longer by default have that association. It definitely does feel like old silver will be something that we will collect elsewhere in the game instead of just in these levels. It's odd that you have to press X to pick it up though, because you didn't have to press X to pick up the items when they were originally in the game. I guess the real question though is old silver just a collectible that you collect and that there's like 100 pieces of old silver, or is there another element to it that will play a role? Does it unlock some kind of upgrade system? Which at a certain level, if it does unlock an upgrade system, then playing on the medium difficulty won't be that hard. Whereas if there are no upgrades in this game and each level and chapter are effectively balanced, it might be a little bit more difficult. 12 chapters doesn't quite feel like that many. There were no real line of sight programmed into this game, so that character turning around and seeing you is fairly obvious. They seem to just start attacking you, I think, pretty much as soon as you are in the room after a few seconds. There definitely was a point where you were also eating dog food, and they've replaced the dog food with just standard food. So this is by far not the best version of Wolfenstein 3D to play. It would make a lot more sense nowadays to just install RetroArch through Steam and install the proper emulator core to run Wolfenstein 3D originally, and I'm sure you can find the ROMs online just perfectly fine. You might use DOSBox Pure as a core to run Wolfenstein 3D, but honestly, there's probably an even better emulator that is specifically specialized around running Wolfenstein in particular. This is a weird laid out room because it's got two doors as entrances, where all the other rooms basically have only one entrance and one exit and one side path. I definitely feel like there was more secrets in the original version of the game. Yeah, you are definitely in a weird position because, and that's the level. And so there's an achievement around that. Okay. And honestly, that's pretty much the only level of Wolfenstein 3D I ever played. Like, I never really had much interest or had the full version of Wolfenstein 3D, just the shareware version, even though the shareware version had more levels than that. Certainly that is just like an awkward point as we're just starting the game to have things wrap up, have things take a break. But whatever. It probably does indicate that we are going to be jumping into actual gameplay.
Handpicked by Death's Head himself as a key member of the SS Paranormal Division. You know, I had the misfortune of encountering her on a mission to Tanzania.
I'm not sure we even have seen Death's Head.
Was sick with blackwater fever at the time. Possibly the worst day of my life. Not even a heavy diet of whiskey could improve my condition, if you can imagine. Anyway, this castle, Helga owns it. It's her occult research center. Now we need to take down Death's Head or the war will be lost. And Helga is vital in doing this. There's a top secret document folder in Helga's office. It should give us the location of Death's Head's compound. Once we have that, well then, we can launch an assault on his base of operations. Shoot him dead. Turn this failure of a war around and be back.
Helga is kind of the real bad guy of the New Order series. There's another achievement. I suspect this is a game that, since it has like 47 more achievements
Off you go.
on top of that,
I'll disable the alarm. You head for Helga's research center. We'll stay in touch via radio.
I suspect that this is a game that gives you an achievement for every level of difficulty you defeat the game on. So, just making that assumption, you potentially can't open that door. You potentially probably shouldn't try to get all the achievements. That's more than likely the case of what happened in the New Order also is that I just did not have any faith in myself and my playing ability and skill, nor the desire to play the game multiple times. Like, I am definitely a fair weather fan of the Wolfenstein series at best, if a fan at all. There's a lot of art here, as far as just references to what German sodas would look like. Although Nuka-Cola is straight up a reference to Fallout series, which Bethesda owns, also the makers of the Fallout series, so that's an Easter egg. It does not quite make sense that the Fallout series might be connected to this reality. It could. You could bend over backwards and try really, really hard to connect the two universes, but it would be for very little reasoning. You don't have to talk to everybody. You don't really have to look everywhere. There's a lot of unique art on the walls and such, and I imagine that this game's engine probably might struggle a little bit with these unique posters. That's definitely something I think you could do with some optimization. I do feel like, though, we went through all of this, and let's see, it feels like there should be something here where we could either turn mouse smoothing on, but really I want to turn head bobbing off. Notably, there is not anything for that. Number of frames to smooth input over. You could go mouse smoothing for a certain number of frames, which that doesn't even make any sense. You could turn on iron sights. We might play with that. Yeah, the only thing I could hope would be controls and then mouse sensitivity and then turning it like way up and then seeing if that speeds up the controller input. Really, I don't think it really did. We could turn that way down. This is really going to come down to, it doesn't feel like it's doing too much if it's adjusting anything. Yeah. So there seems to be a lack of tweaks here that you would like to have. There seems to be some odd pop in when you turn your head. There seems to be some odd head bob. All of these feel, looking particularly here, you can see when you're not looking that deloads, and then when you look it flickers white first and then loads in. So just by default, if something's not loaded, it's a bright white skybox when it should be a black skybox. That would be considerably less noticeable. For a 2015 game, I don't think that there's See, I don't know if this guy's tied up here. Nope, this guy's just like leaning with his arm behind in an awkward pose. Almost certainly, this is a case where they animate somebody further in the game with their arms tied behind their back, and they've just taken this pose and decided to reuse it where he's leaning. And I imagine each of these little art pieces they had fun making, unless these are actually historically accurate and just scanned in. And I imagine each of the art pieces are going to be collectibles that you can unlock throughout the game. We unlocked a new model, and I don't know what we really did to unlock the new model.
Okay. Inside the elevator.
Roger that. Guard spotted. Going in for the kill. There you go now. Sleep tight.
Okay. Part of this definitely comes more from the idea of stealth, whereas I don't have any extra bullets. Whereas the original Wolfenstein 3D game was not a stealth game by any means. Like, you couldn't crouch, you couldn't do anything to jump or hide behind corners. They would just know you were there if you're close enough and attack you. So helmets or armor, and that does imply to me that this is a game much like the original Wolfenstein 3D, where we won't have regenerating health. Lots of bullets here. Lots of guns. If anything, I suspect what we may find here. Let's see, press right stick to dual-wield. What? I don't know if they both have silencers on them, though. It looks like they both have silencers on them. But I feel like at some point they may take the silencers off. And this is almost certainly in abilities. Yep, same old overcharging with the health. Pause now if you want to read this. Pause now if you want to read the rest of that. Yeah. Looking at this weapon wheels, it seems like we've already found a third of the weapons. So you're going to only have a limited supply there. And this is going to be all about getting your armor up as high as possible, because armor is going to play some level in reducing the amount of damage you take. Pause now if you want to read. Pause now if you want to read the rest of it. And see, here's a Skyrim reference of armor, so that they are definitely joking around here. Which that does, if we found Wolfenstein 3D original reference already, and we found the Skyrim reference, and we found the Fallout reference, that does imply to me that there's not that much game that's going to actually happen here. And we may already be in her office. So, yeah, I do somewhat suspect that
Don't shoot. It's just me.
I don't even see him. I feel like this guy's gonna possibly betray us.
I'll take a gander up here. Look for a safe. That's where the folder should be.
So, one of the questions to definitely ask here, and see that's a Doom reference there, with that armor.
So, where would I be then? Blazkowicz, go through every nook and cranny. We're not leaving here without that folder.
Yeah.
Blasted. I found the safe, but the bloody folder is gone. It's just not there. I saw a radio down there. Use it to contact Kessler. Tell him we can't find the folder. Make it snappy, Blazkowicz. I'll stay on the lookout.
Yeah, so 100 armor and overcharging is the maximum you can get. So the question really comes down to, when you take one bit of damage, do you lose one armor, or do you lose slightly less health and some armor? Double barrel shotgun on the wall. This does definitely feel like what's going to happen here is that we are either going to lose because we took too long, or we can just take all the time we want because we're just about to get either betrayed or knocked out and lose all of our guns and weapons, and then find there's a whole bunch of zombies.
Come in, Landseer, over.
I don't know where the zombies are really going to come in, but who knows.
Landseer, we can't find Lucy's present, over.
Pathfinder, I have new information regarding Lucy's present. Rendezvous with me as soon as you can. We will discuss further, over.
Roger. Pathfinder out.
Shit! Bloody hell! Hold them off, Blazkowicz! I'll find us an escape route!
Okay. Alright, so it's not worth it to take on these guys at a quiet level. We should just shoot everywhere. It's a little dark. We don't have any grenades. So the glowing blue on their back is somewhat helpful. Noticeably there we have like lost most of our armor already. And there's definitely a chance here where I may just find that the game is a little too difficult. I am almost completely out of health. And that is a different experience, certainly. Like you seem to have a regenerating health of yeah, it seems like you have a regenerating health back up to 20. Alright, let's go into the options then. Bring them on, not so good. And honestly, it doesn't hurt my feelings to be Call the Baby and play Call I Play Daddy. And it will definitely be a better experience overall, in my opinion, to just not end up dying like crazy. Apparently there are perks here that you either buy later on once they let you do that, or you earn them. Let's see. Some of it says silent commando kills. Is that Possibly with the knife. I don't think it needs to be with the knife. Kill enemies with the last bullet in the clip, which they probably programmed the last bullet in the clip to do more damage. Killing an MG46, kill from cover, 3 enemies with a grenade. So doing some of these, like pipe head explosions, would reduce health loss from melee attacks. So there is a scenario here where you should just play on the you should probably just play on the easiest difficulty to start with, and then use that. That was probably a waste. If anything, I've been probably fairly wasteful already. I probably should not have picked up all this stuff. Had I been way more conservative and not collected all the food and armor to begin with, it's questionable whether all of these people are going to jump down. I think they are eventually, otherwise there's just too high of a chance that you would never look up and you'd always just get shot in the head for not being smart enough to look up. A lot of first-person shooter games tend to not have you trained in the idea as far as looking upward, and you can just keep everything on a fairly even playfield. Is it worth it? Let's ask this. Will that explode? Yes, it will. And that is kind of a great...
What a bloody cock-up, eh, BJ?
And we still have a chance. Kessler knows something.
Well, it's worth bloody note if we don't get out of this place. Look, I found a way out. Come here, I'll help you out. Careful.
Where is he?
We're meeting Kessler in the village tavern.
Roger that.
There we are. Get up here. Quick as you can.
And then that just jumped your guns away and then brought them back, which... Here we've got some elongated heads, like ancient aliens. Alright, well, let's pause now if you want to read that. So this was Helga's office. I don't feel like we saw Helga's office in the New Order. But yeah, this definitely could have been in the original game. Pause now if you want to read this. Pause now if you want to read the rest of that. Here's possibly some of the Atlantean technology that a hint. I feel like I may have missed something there, but whatever.
Shit.
And that definitely feels like older technology compared to what you see after the coma in the New Order. Although arguably, the technology doesn't seem to change that much in the few decades that he's in the coma. You have to assume that even now, in both the reboot realities that are shown, that the technology is way more advanced than it should be, because I think the general idea is that these reboot realities are in part a third or fourth cycle of the Nazis going back in time and changing things, or having access to a to technology that then B.J. Blazkowicz manages to undo by going back in time. There's definitely a time travel element, I think, to it, where the realities just get worse and worse each time.
Hey, Blazkowicz, you awake in there?
It's funny, I can crawl down, but I still can't really grab it.
DJ, answer me.
God damn it. Rats.
Well, we have Lottie's letter. Which, pause now if you want to read all of that. Pause now if you want to read the rest of that. Pause now. So now there's one letter in this level, lots of pieces of gold in that, and 3 concept arts and 4 characters. And let's see. We collected 14 of 100 helmets. And so they are giving you a very nice reason to collect helmets, even if you don't really need them, because then you'll unlock the ability to overcharge armor. Health regeneration does seem to be a thing. Yeah, and I thought I might have I would have unlocked something if I overcharged your health high enough. I just didn't do it high enough. So I at some point may have to just find a room full of health and decide to eat it all as fast as possible. Getting it to regenerate 30% faster is probably not going to save me too often, though. Getting it to recover 5 more points is probably not going to save me. Increasing it by 25 points might get me to a decent amount. As far as the other perks, we haven't made any progress to them, and this doesn't scroll down, so this is it as far as the game is concerned. And it does definitely feel like this game is going to be fairly short as an experience, which is fine. And it does feel like we're going to spend most of our time in smaller enclosed areas, which is fine. Almost certainly the zombies are going to come in at some point where they like cast a spell to make it either nighttime, or they just wait till nighttime and then cast a spell at that point. I wouldn't be surprised if we spend this entire game in and around Castle Wolfenstein, and don't really travel to a whole bunch of different locations, which that'll be fine. It does definitely feel like, though, that the Old Blood is not going to be as ambitious as the New Order is, which I guess they were covering their bases. Very possibly MachineGames had 2 different teams, or just were developing 2 games in parallel, one being the Old Blood, which would be closer to what the original Wolfenstein 3D is, without so much shields and regenerative health, and more focused around actually having to find health packets and armor to rebuild your health. That is a very old school way of doing things. I don't think too many people really want to go back to the days where you're searching levels for health kits and armor. So it is possibly too much of a throwback. And then with the New Order, it definitely was very much taking it in a different direction and revitalizing it. Which, in all fairness, that's what Wolfenstein needed, because they had already made plenty of remakes and attempts at reboots of Wolfenstein, and none of it ever stuck. I frankly wouldn't be surprised if after some kind of time traveling shenanigans, the timeline gets reset after Wolfenstein 3, and then we have a reboot that has more RPG elements and possibly even some of those horrible microtransactions, or just a standard action experience in a more open world type gameplay. I wouldn't be surprised if some of those buzzwords get thrown into this to try to make it something more. And certainly they'll have to fight those impulses if they want to try to make Wolfenstein stand out. Because inherently, but since Bethesda owns Wolfenstein and Doom, you've got two intellectual properties there that you need to try to be able to sell to the same audience with different sales pitch. And the sales pitch cannot just be, well, one game is where you're playing as BJ Blazkowicz and you're fighting mechanical Nazis, or Nazis with advanced technology, and the other game is Doom and you're playing as Doom guy fighting mechanical demons with advanced technology. That doesn't fly. There needs to be a different way of telling the story, a different feel to it, and very possibly slightly different gameplay concepts. But yeah, that is going to be a tight wire to walk. Anyways, it's been an hour, and so we'll probably try to do about one chapter an hour. It's only been an hour, however, because we found the Wolfenstein 3D level, and I guess we'll try to do all of those. I definitely see that there are some problems with this game that shouldn't exist in a 2015 release, as far as head bobs and texture pop in. But yeah, it's nothing game breaking so far. That's going to be it for this recording. As always, I ask you to like, share, subscribe, comment, and watch every second of my videos. If you want to further follow me on any social media sites, there's a whole bunch of links down below. And if you want to support me even further, there's a link to Patreon, or you can friend me on Steam and gift me a game off my wishlist. Thank you for watching. Have a good evening.